Love it.
Oh,
Right?
that is cute.
So perfect.
It's so cute with your jean
Yeah.
short. And then
Great.
Anne-Marie has the other, like more, the
But
larger
looser,
size.
More
A
oversized.
little bit longer.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And is it a little longer too?
It is a little longer, yes, but
Yeah.
the length is completely customizable because it's worked from the top down. If you
Right?
want it to be shorter, you can do that. If you want it to be longer, you can do that because the rows can just, you can
Yeah.
add or subtract. So it's really simplistic to do.
So pretty.
I'm glad you like it.
Lovely.
Thank
It was
you.
so fun to get an email from Salena that was like, hey, I could do another bag, but I have this other idea. What do you think? And it was just a great addition to the collection. So I really appreciate you stepping forward with that.
Of course. And I think it's a testament to how versatile the yarn can be. Because like I said, when I was working the Trinity tote, the entire time I was working with it, I thought, oh man, I'd love to make a shirt. I'd love to make a sweater. I could make a summer top. I'm so glad Toni made the hat. I love that hat so much, by the way. You can just really see like just how the yarn can cascade, and it just really has such a nice look to it.
It really does.
Dogs agree.
Leah agrees, Laura?
Absolutely. Well, I didn't say much about the tote because I kind of dived into the low tie truck. But the Trinity tote, that was the first project that I made with the yarn. And again, ditto everything that Toni said. It's a yarn that feels great not only when you have the completed fabric, but even when you're working with it. It's just really delicious to work with. It's really just very satisfying. I love this tote bag because it's 3 essential granny squares. It's not a classic granny square, so it's got a little bit extra. So it's just 3 granny squares that are seamed together. And I really like this tote bag style because I think that it's really trendy. It's really boho. I think it's really cute. It's something that you can make and people will ask you where you bought it from and you can be like, I made it. So that's always nice. And I really like that it has these little tassel kind of, it's not really a closure because it's not really keeping anything really in or out. It's just this nice little addition. I love kind of putting tassels and fringe on everything. So anytime I can add a tassel or a fringe to something, I will. And I just thought this was the perfect kind of project to add that little addition to it. And again, it just really, the yarn is so beautiful and it makes such a great tassel that I couldn't resist. So I added that on.
I love it because it feels like you can actually put your stuff in it and use it as a bag, and that it's really not gonna stretch out or be weird at the end of the day. So I love that part of it. That it's knit or it's worked in such a tight gauge too. I think that helps.
I'm glad that you said that because like Toni said, using a smaller hook is going to give you a tighter fabric. And so I think especially for something like a tote bag, you want to feel comfortable about putting things in it. You don't want it to stretch out and lose shape. So yeah, I did the same thing. I used a G, I used a 4mm, and I think that helped, but you can go down even if you want to. If you really want to create that really tight fabric. And the same thing for this tote. If you want to create a larger bag, again, it's really easy to just kind of add some rounds to that to do so. So it's versatile.
Can I ask you and Toni a question about the smaller crochet hook? So Toni, you and I talked about this, and I think Chantal, we talked about it. I learned how to crochet first and did that forever. But with the smaller hook, sometimes like the tension, it's almost like it hurts my hands and it's so much concentration, especially if you're using something that's got a lot of cotton, so there's not a ton of give. How are you finding this? I mean, because it's 50 cotton, 50 wool, is there a little more give? Is it not as painful? Do you not drink quite as much when you're working with?
Go ahead, Toni, if you want to go first.
Sure. Let me unmute myself. So one of the things I definitely focus on, especially when I'm using yarns that are new to me, is what kind of hook matches that yarn. So typically with a merino wool, I like to use a plastic hook. That tension works well for me. But when I transition to cotton, I'll usually go to an aluminum hook because I need a little bit more slip. Especially when I'm working with such a small hook, I need something with that I won't get that tension issue, because I'll start to feel it in my elbow and in my wrist and all the bad spots. So adjusting my hook makes a huge difference. And especially with something like the Frankie hat, there's so many stitches that, you have to make sure early on that you get into that rhythm and you're not having that difficulty and those tension issues, because you'll never make it to the brim. You'll just be too frustrated. You'll throw it in a corner. So I definitely recommend, if somebody's making that project, start with the gauge swatch, not just to figure out, do I have the right number of stitches, but do I have the right tool to make sure that I'll enjoy this process?
That's brilliant. And what brand do you use for the aluminum hooks?
Oh, I'm a Clover girl all day,
Amour,
every day.
okay.
Yes, I
Okay.
use the Clover Amours for anything that has cotton in it. I always reach for those.
Okay.
Wow, I'm learning some things. I dig it. I'm so glad that you said that, Toni, because I am so committed to my Susan Bates aluminum that like nothing else exists in my mind. So I really appreciate what you're saying about maybe using a plastic hook, because I can already see how that could it could give you a different experience. So I'm going to try that. I like that. That's really good. Like Toni said, I think that the yarn will dictate what hook is going to work best, not only for what you're making, the actual item and what it feels like for you, but I always think about what fabric I'm going for. So do I need a dense fabric? I'm making a tote bag. I want it to be a little bit more dense. So, how small of a hook do I use so that it's not crinkled? It's not like, it's not crinkled, or it's not so tight that it's like this super dense fabric, but it's dense enough to where it's going to hold its shape and it's not really going to have this bounce back that I'm not looking for.
Thanks.
Great tips. All right, so our next designer is Susanna IC, and she did the Nutali sweater for us. So, and that's actually the one that I'm wearing, which is right here. And your bio is going to come up in just a second, but I've known Susanna for a long time. We've worked together for years. So she's done a ton of lace, and that's really what she's known for. And I don't know that you can see it on this sweater, but there's like little flowers going up the sweater. And here we go. So Susanna lives in Maryland, but is originally from Europe, having lived in 2 European countries and 7 states. And I think you've lived in 3 states since I've known you.
Yep.
So,
And counting.
yeah, exactly. She was taught by her grandmother to crochet when she was 5. And then she tried to learn knitting from her left-handed grandmother, and it didn't stick, which is funny because that is how I learned how to knit, is from my left-handed grandmother. But when she wanted to make a cable sweater for her baby, she picked up the art of knitting pretty quickly again. And this sweater is inspired by water lilies. And Susanna's kind of famous for her crescent shawls as well. So I'm sure a lot of people have knit those. And one of the things that Susanna and I talked about was having a sweater that had maybe a little bit more transitional to it. So longer sleeves. And so those of us who live in climates with big temperature swings could have something that maybe wasn't quite so summery out of this yarn. So now I'm going to turn it
if you want to, since it's a top down with a round yoke and all in one piece, you can make the sleeve short, long, 3/4, any length you want. You can make the body tunic, which one of my test knitters actually did. And I intended the ease to be positive. So about, 6 inches or so. So it's nice and loose and comfy, but she made it skin tight and it looks awesome. Yeah, this is the fit I wanted for it. That's what I imagine exactly what Sun is wearing. So it kind of skims, and since it's a cotton, wool, you want it to be comfortable. It has little slits on the sides. Yeah, I just wanted something comfy, but it's really interesting how cute my friend looks in a skin tight tunic length, one of these. So I took advantage of this round yoke and made it in lace that would normally have to be shaped on the wrong side as well. So all of the lace work, the decreases and increases, are done on the right side since it's all in round. So I took advantage of that and did something that would be pretty difficult for a newbie knitter to do. Now this is not as difficult. It's just simple SSKs and K2 togs and some yarn overs. But back to my grandmother, which I miss dearly. She taught me when I was about 5 how to crochet, and picking up a right-hander from a left-hander with one thing held in your hand, it was pretty simple. Then she tried to do the knitting, and I just could not figure that out. So I was frustrated. I threw it in a corner, never picked it up again until the cable sweater for my 6-month-old didn't work in crochet. So my grandmother, before she passed away, that was her biggest thing. She was always like, I can't believe you're actually making a living knitting. Because I can do I'm an artist by trade. I have a degree in fashion design, art history, studio arts. I'm a medieval historian and all of that, but I actually knit, which was something I could never do. So she loved that, and she always told everybody about it. She's like, my granddaughter could never knit, and now that's what she's doing. So on any given day, you can find me on my sofa sitting and knitting. That's what I do, 24/7 pretty much. Besides making dinners for the people that live in this house with me.
Hey, what have you watched lately? Just out of curiosity.
What have I watched lately? Oh my goodness.
Or do you remember, do you have a visual memory of what you watched while you made this sweater? Like, is it always connected?
Oh my gosh, I've been watching Netflix pretty much all the time since pandemic became the thing. So I've rewatched the Game of Thrones from the beginning, which I recommend to everybody. If you lost track of all these characters, it's awesome to do it in like 3 days. I've, of course, rewatched Harry Potter. Meanwhile, I also reread all of the Harry Potter books. What else did I do? I watched just about everything. Oh, yes, when Dexter was on, I never got to watch it, so I watched that. What else comes up? Yeah, I've been watching some crimi and some science fiction. I'm a big science fiction horror fan, so yeah.
All right. We'll keep an eye on all your designs and kind of look for the science fiction horror elements.
Oh, well, there's not that much of it. I do have a Dracula and Mina and Lucy Westenra wraps and crescents and shawls, but I usually do things inspired by nature. Rain, wind, clouds, flowers, mostly, just like this Nushali. Nushali is actually the scientific name for one of the water lilies that is known for blue, really beautifully blue blooms. And since the yarn I got is really beautifully blue, I'm like, this is perfect. I'm going to call it Nushali. And plus, it's a pretty word. I like to collect words since, I've been around a lot of languages. I don't like learning new languages. I like words. So I have a shawl called Sodat, and I have a shawl called Hirayeth, and all these kind of things that I really enjoy. And a lot of shawls named actually for insects and and flowers and stuff like that. So that's what I do. I knit all the time. Lace, beaded lace, and cables together is the best thing ever. The more complicated, the better. But sometimes I like a simple, just like Nushali is very simple. Once you get past the yoke, it's all just stuck in it with a little bit of little ribbing at the edge. So,
Son, maybe we could make that together next time.
Yes.
Son
I'll
does
do
the
the
hard
yoke,
part.
you finish the body. I'm
a
good.
little knit along. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So
Awesome. Thank you, Susanna.
Well, thank you.
And next up on the garment trend that we're on is Chantal. So Chantal is of Knitatude, and she is out of Alberta, Canada. So she's been knitting since 2013 and been designing since 2016. And because she lives in Alberta, or Calgary, I think, it's a lot cooler there. So it says the majority of her year is filled with snow. So it was fun to have a design inspired by springtime, and Anne-Marie is modeling this, and we are all in love with this tee too, with the flowers right up the front, and then there's really cute back detailing with some eyelets, and I feel like you could flip it around too if you wanted to and have the
That'd be
leaves up
sweet.
the back. So I'll turn it over to Chantal to talk about her design.
Yeah, of course. So hi, Chantal of Knitatude. I'm from Calgary, Alberta. So again, I am always in freezing cold. I'm in Canada. It's always snowing, but my design, I really wanted to go off of some really classic designs. If you've ever seen any of my stuff, it's really, really simplistic. I always tout myself as like a beginner garment friendly pattern designer. I really like making things where you have to think for like maybe a millisecond, and then you just get to chill out and then think for a little bit and then just chill out. So a lot of my stuff has stockinette, has really beautiful classic lines that are really, if I could take anything, I would say that my inspiration comes from my mother, who is like the Banana Republic queen. She just walks out of there constantly, like monochrome. That's where a lot of my style comes from. And with this tee, I really wanted to be able to take this wool and find a way to be able to make a summer friendly pattern. Obviously cotton is just like such a beautiful pair when it comes to springtime and summer, and I thought that would be gorgeous. So while Toni and Salena are talking about a really tight gauge, I hate knitting really tightly, so I bumped it up. I went to a 5mm for this one. It has 3 to 5 inches of positive ease, so it's a pretty boxy sweater, and I wanted something that had a lot of drape, had a lot of movement to it, and you would get a lot of breeze through. So that's why I picked some beautiful lace at the very top, well, on the very front. Just because there's something really nice about having leaves. Again, I live in Calgary, so I only get spring in like, it's not even spring now, it's still snowing outside. But I wanted to be able to really embody that idea of having those spring buds, those flowers come out, and I really wanted to pair it with summer. So I chose this beautiful leaf like detailing. It's 12 rows. I promise that I am not the lace person like Susanna. So if I can do this, absolutely you can too. But I really wanted to create a really simple boxy pattern that, even though it feels boxy and it does come off the shoulders, it's still tailored. So I don't know if you can pull it out slightly, but it does have some, like, if you notice the shape, it goes up and then down. I wanted to be able to make sure that it was really size inclusive and it really fit bodies really well. So my plus sizes, from especially extra large and up, they do really create that curvature to make sure that it fits really well. It doesn't get too baggy in the armpits, and it just like feels wonderful. I'm also a huge fan of wearing tights, and like I hate jeans. So I wanted something that would cover your ass whenever you were wearing with tights. I'm a big fan. And on the back, I wanted to be willing include some kind of like detailing to it as well. So there are some eyelets in it. I specifically stopped them right at the bra line because I didn't want anyone to see that. So you have those like nice flowy pieces that you can put inside and out. I had some of my testers eliminate the eyelets in the back, and it's absolutely beautiful. But again, I just really wanted to pair it with like a nice soft tonal. I made mine in, I think it's Silver Fox. It's the most beautiful, like I love some grays. I'm like, if you notice my whole entire yarn stash behind, it's like gray and blush. And I just love this yarn mainly because it, even though it's still like a tonal piece to it, it still really showcases all those details really, really well. So that is my design. That's the whole shebang. You're welcome to go check it out and buy yarn.
It's gorgeous. Thank you.
Can you put the silver fox next to your hair? I mean,
It's like you matched it on purpose.
I mean, we've been watching you from afar. With ours, you know?
From afar, make it close soon.
Yeah, I know.
Chantal, what are you watching on Netflix? You were like doing like a big nod. when you were
Oh,
talking about
I'm
it.
currently on a HBO kick. So when you were talking about what do you remember while working on things, my first ever scarf I made while watching The Wire, which is
Oh, I
unreal.
love The Wire.
It took me, my scarf
Amazing.
took me 48 hours, and I know that because of watching like 4 seasons of The Wire, but then I never realized when I rewatched it again that I was so focused on learning how to knit that there's like very pivotal characters who die in that show, and I had no recollection at all. I was like, wait, what? And then right now I'm watching Treme, which is a beautiful, beautiful piece. It's also done by HBO, and it talks about just New Orleans after the Hurricane Katrina, and like how like it's amazing. It's so good. And Drag Race, because who doesn't love drag queens?
Chantal, you had my favorite color request ever because we were sort of talking about colors and you said, well, my hair is purple, so I need something that's really neutral.
Yeah, I have a normally, yeah, it's faded quite a bit right now, but normally I have like pretty bright and purple hair. So I always try and stay away from bright colors because I have a tendency to look like a popsicle. So I'm all about the neutrals and the blushes and the like really chill colors. And that's what this whole entire collection has. Like your colors are beautiful.
The colors did die really vintagey and fabulous.
Yeah, they're super cool. They kind of stone washed.
Yeah.
I love that you've got a design that, you know, somebody like me who needs mostly stockinette, you can think for a millisecond. I could finish that project and then I could move over to Susanna's piece.
Yeah.
As my skills develop.
It's a stepping stone.
You want to have one complicated thing and one simple thing. So it's kind of nice to have like both of those right next to each other.
Yeah. And someone just asked, how does a finished project block? It's awesome. It expands slightly because it's obviously, it has cotton in it, but I planned for mine to grow about, I would say about an inch, and it hit probably an inch. Like it slightly bloomed, but not considerably, not like massive, like a superwash merino or anything like that.
Yeah, can I just throw in that I did my DK on US 6, which is the average size for that, and it didn't really change once during blocking. I mean, I could have tagged it much bigger, but just leaving it alone, it stayed pretty much the same. So yeah, again, the needle size will make a huge difference in how it behaves. But it was great because, I mean, it drapes beautifully no matter what the gauge, obviously. We can all see that in all the different projects here.
All right, so George is up next. I've worked with George for a really long time, and this is the first time we've ever been face-to-face, like 7 years. So for different designs through the ages, which is really fun. So this is George Shaheen of 10 Hours or Less, and he is a knitwear designer based in Central Florida. He's been knitting and crocheting since the age of 12. And it says over 40 years. And when he's not knitting—
That's a lie.
I think it meant over 4 years.
Okay, I'll go with that.
We're good. And when he's not knitting, he enjoys hiking the great trails of Florida. So, and Anne-Marie is modeling the knitted netting fingerless gloves and hat. So I love the fingerless gloves on this. There's something like very 80s and fabulous about them that just makes the inner child in me so happy. But George, let me turn it over to you for a little bit to talk about your designs.
Okay, well, hat tip to all my designing peers for having a memory to be able to discuss their designs, because I need a cheat sheet, and that's what I'm going to use. So I would say that Sun had contacted me to design a lace hat initially. And since there isn't a lot of canvas in a hat, especially, you know, a DK or light worsted, you're getting 100 and 120 stitches. I really wasn't thinking of a really complex lace pattern. So I thought, well, let me go into something more modern, like a mesh or a netting. So I settled on a 2-round repeat bamboo lace, which incorporates twisted stitches every other row. And what that does is you have one row which pulls in one direction, and then one row, because of the twisted stitches, pulls in another direction. And that kind of slight tension raises the fabric a little bit to give it a little bit more texture. And once I had decided on the lace pattern, I thought an all over lace pattern doesn't particularly thrill me for a hat. I wanted to do something a little bit different. So I thought of putting different panels of stitches in between the lace. And I had tried seed stitch and garter stitch and reverse stockinette stitch. And it ended up being that plain old stockinette stitch looks fantastic in this yarn. It's because of the stone washed effect of the dyeing and the way that the yarn is constructed, which I was able to kind of unply it. And it appears to me that there are 8 plies in the yarn, that they're plied in pairs, and then those 4 pairs are twisted together. And that's what seems to me to give it fantastic stitch definition, especially a pattern stitch that has more of a vertical appearance like stockinette stitch. So as much as I wanted to do something fancy in between the lace, it ended up being that stockinette stitch really filled the bill. And the hat itself is one size fits most. So it'll fit a 20 to 24 inch head circumference. The design model is made 11 inches long, so it has a slightly slouchy silhouette, but the pattern will allow you to do it any length that you want. It's worked entirely in right side rounds, and there isn't a single purl stitch in the hat. It's all knitting. It'll take you about 10 hours to knit it, hence the name 10 hours or less. It'll take 1 skein of yarn, and the hat band itself is worked in heel stitch. So that's anyone who's done a traditional heel flap for a sock will be very familiar with the heel stitch. It's a stockinette stitch derivative, but it uses slip stitches to kind of mimic the elasticity of a ribbing without having the look of a purl stitch. And so because of the cotton content, I was a little leery because of the cotton content, and because there was a lack of like information. A lot of times when I work with a yarn, I'll go on Ravelry, and if it's been on the market for a year, I'll be able to see this person says it stretched while it was wearing, or this person will say it shrunk. And because I didn't have that, I didn't want to make a hat that could possibly, because of the cotton content, stretch out because of after a day of wearing or body warmth, and then either fall off the head or look like it just melted over someone's forehead. So what I did is, in addition to knitting it at a slightly tighter gauge than I normally would, the aside for me as a designer is I thought that this yarn worked up really well at 5 stitches to the inch, which is kind of like the sweet spot for many fashion sweaters done in worsted weight yarn. But because I was concerned about the stretching, I went down 1 size smaller and knitted at 5 1/4 stitches to the inch. The fabric had drape, it still had softness, but it had a little bit more heft to it, so that if it was worn throughout the day, it wasn't going to stretch out enormously. And another thing that I did to compensate for if the cotton was going to stretch is that the hat band is worked in a double layer. So it's hemmed as you go, because I know people don't want to finish. And so what I did is the hat band is worked twice the length, the finished length that you want. And then on the final row of the hat band, you work into the live stitches on the needle and into the first row of stitches on the hat band at the same time. So when you complete the final hat band row, it's already hemmed. And let's see if there's anything else. And since it's worked in the round, there's no finishing. Once you're done with the knitting, you're done with the hat. And that's my spiel on the hat. The fingerless gloves was not my idea. Hat tip to Sun Meyer. She got in touch with me and said, what would you think of doing fingerless gloves to match the hat? And my motto is, I never say no to Sun. That has been my motto for the past 5-6 years that we've worked together, and that has served me quite well. So going with that, I did come up with the fingerless gloves design. The pattern comes in 2 sizes, small, medium, and large. 1 skein of the wool cotton will make 2 pairs of the fingerless gloves in either size. And they take about 4 hours to knit for a pair. Each glove is essentially knit as a single rectangle without any shaping and incorporates the same stitches as the hat. The cuff is worked in heel stitch, but it's not, because I think of it as a warm weather fashion, I decided not to do a double layer at the cuff because I thought that would be a little bit too much for something, in the summer. So it's a single layer heel stitch, swings right into the bamboo lace with some stockinette panels on each side. And once again, because I was concerned about stretch throughout the day, and that I didn't want it to stretch out. Here's the aside. The reason why I'm concerned about stretch when it comes to cotton, and I know this is a 50-50, but I used to have a 100% cotton sweater that I loved. And by the end of the day, it was like out to here, the shoulders were sagging, and I loved it, but it looked like a tent. And that's okay for me in my fashion because no one's looking at me, looking to put me in vogue, but I don't want to put out a pattern that people say it looks beautiful off the needles, but I could only wear it for 30 minutes because it started falling off my head. So to prevent the outer edge or the top edge of the fingerless gloves from stretching, I ended up doing an I-cord bind off, which gives it just a little bit more heft and a little bit more stability at the top. And let me see if there's anything else. I would say for me, the stitch definition of the yarn is fantastic. And again, I assume it's because of the 8-ply construction, but I'm not a spinner, so I can't vouch for that. I think that's one of the reasons. It's probably one of the softest cotton wool blends that I've worked with, because when I think of cotton, softness is not the first thing that comes to mind, but it was not hard on my hands at all. What I would say is after washing, the stitch definition and the softness both improved even more. And when I washed it, one of my concerns with any hand-dyed yarn is it going to run? Is it going to bleed? And if this yarn bled in the wash, I would not be on this panel because I won't vouch for a yarn that bleeds. I don't care how beautiful it is. I don't care how beautiful the color is. If you're going to bleed onto something else that I've worked with, we have no relationship after that. So I would say the good news is the 2 colors.
You mean just yarn or people too?
I like yarn much more than people, but let's not get into that.
Okay.
The 2 colors that I used are Dr. Zhivago's Sky, which is a medium gray here, and Copper Pink Solid, which is a medium rose. Those 2 colors that I used, the wash water was clear and the rinse water was clear. And that I was very happy about that. In my experience, and I think Susanna brought up a good point as far as gauge goes, because I worked at a tighter than normal gauge, I found that the pre-wash and the post-wash stitch gauge was exactly the same for both the stitch gauge and the row gauge. Now we're talking 5 1/4 stitches to the inch and 7 rows to the inch. So a reasonably firm fabric. There was no stretching, there was no shrinking. For all of the fabrics that I used, the swatches, the hat, everything, the pre-wash gauge was the same as the post-wash gauge. So you don't have, I don't know what someone's experience would be if you're going to be doing a large garment. But for me, I would feel comfortable taking the off the needle gauge for an accessory and just swinging right into the project. But please don't sue me if that doesn't work for you.
We did a ton of testing with this yarn, and this is one of the swatches that we did, which is actually in Dubrovnik. But we washed the yarn 16 to 20 times over several swatches and several colors to make sure that it didn't run and to make sure that it didn't pill. But now Julia's looking at me because I think we have some giveaways.
Yes, we do. We have some giveaways, and then we can get back to that. I also have a couple questions that we're going to get through too. So I want everyone to answer in the chat. Everyone is, you can win the giveaway. It's going to be picked at random. So in the chat, just write to me and tell me what you're going to make with Tosh wool plus cotton. And then answer in the chat. I'll pick 3 of you, and your 3 lucky winners are going to get 2 skeins of Tosh wool plus cotton. Cool. Keep them coming.
Nice. And I see Salena asked about how we chose the colors. So Anne-Marie is also part of the color crew, and we all got together and started looking and thinking about this yarn and summer and what we would wear it with. So trying to have a balance of some good lights, but also some kind of nicer darks, and knowing that it was gonna, we had just gotten our first round of test dyes. And so we didn't have all the colors yet, obviously. We just had this color that's really dark. But we wanted to play with it and really play with that kind of vintage feel. And all of us really loved the way that the yarn sort of took the vintage feel and kind of took it to a next level. And I think one of the really fun things that we did the first day, and I've got a few of these. So like here's Dr. Zhivago. This is how it dyes in Tosh DK. And that's how it dyes in the wool cotton. And the interesting kind of fun part of it is that the cotton doesn't dye because it needs a sort of different process to dye. So when we're dyeing the yarns, it comes out really different. And I think it was really fun. And Anne-Marie, you can chime in on this if you want to. When we did the first, we did about 65 colors and we kind of put them all out on a table. And then we went through and tried to figure out which colors were which without looking at the labels. And some of them were really true to what they look like, and other ones were really different. So this is Texas Tulips, and I've got it in Impression, which tends to dye really dark. And here it is in Wool Cotton, where it really is much lighter. And then we've got it in Prairie to show Superwash Merino, and look at how muted that is. So we really had fun with it, and we got to kind of pick the best of the best for colors. And then there's a lot of them that have just been really surprising, like Cousteau, which is such an oldie but goodie. And it's washing out there, which is sort of tealy. And in the wool cotton, you can really, there's 3 different colors that are really distinct in this yarn, which is really cool. So we're super excited about that. I think Julia has put all of the specs in the chat. It is a DK weight. It really wears well. We did do a ton of testing and a ton of washing, both for stretching and for pilling, and we didn't find either. And that's part of the way that it's plied, and the reason that it has plies on plies on plies was to try to really get a nice blend of the wool and the cotton. So it wasn't wool with just cotton blended in. And we really wanted to make it different from Dandelion, which was a very old yarn that Madeline Tosh did that had some wool and some linen. And so we were really conscious of that when we were looking at different bases. And I do want to give just a big shout out to Amy Gunderson, because this was at least partly her idea. So she was talking about like how she really loves these sort of wool and our protein and cellulose blends, and a really good blend is such a great thing. So she was the inspiration that really sort of led us down that path, which is amazing.
I'll throw out, Son, if I can add in, one of our customers named Todd had emailed me a couple days ago and asked, you know, given the strong stitch definition, is it going to show mistakes, you know, or if you've got uneven tension, you know, you guys, when you're using the smaller needles, you know, you're probably controlling the tension a little bit more than somebody like me who is all over the place and super scattered. So I made this little baby sweater, and I was going to see if you can kind of see, I've got terrible tension. You can tell when I'm stressed. You can tell when when things are going well, and you can see a little bit of, you know, the uneven tension, but it's not nearly as bad as you would think. It actually almost kind of contributes to the river washed vintage feel of it. It's very kind of denim-y looking. So super, super cute. And this is the winter wheat with the deep and that silver fox that goes with Chantal. So
It also blocks out so well because I'm in the same boat, like my tension, but it blocks out so well.
Yeah. So,
I agree. I had to block mine because of all the lace, or because of all the open work. And it blocked beautifully. Everything was really even and uniform afterwards.
Like, maybe don't do this all the time, but this yarn, if you put it in a lingerie bag and put it in the dryer, because it's 8 plies, it really will bloom, but it also will even out quite a bit. And the 8 plies will sort of slip along each other and even out some of that tension. So it is really great for baby stuff as well.
yeah, big fan for the baby stuff because it's small and simple, and the babies don't care if you make mistakes.
And mom will love it too, because she can throw it in the washer, throw it in the dryer, call it good, and it will wear beautifully. So when we did our wash tests, we throw them in the washer with towels and whatever tied, and then toss them in the dryer, let it go through the whole cycle with all the denim, all the everything, just to make sure that the yarn actually holds up no matter what you do. It does hurt my heart a lot, so please don't do that every single time you wash your pieces. But if you need to, it's good to have that option.
Well, and now we know from George, if Son says that we should not do it, we should not do it. All need to do Son and do what Son says. Because she is right most of the time.
She's the only reason why I'm here. Well, that and Madeline Tosh's reputation, but I stick with Son.
Yeah, us too. And we're so grateful. I really think, I mean, Son came on board to Madeline Tosh in September 1st, and immediately dove into this yarn and brought this yarn to life. And I mean, it's such a gift. Like, I really think that this yarn is going to be really going to mark the new chapter of Madeline Tosh and kind of the second generation. I mean, I think that this is going to be a staple for us. It's kind of going to be our new TML. I love it. Antonia just said, like, it's great for baby blankets. I hope please, all of you guys, hook up with somebody tonight, get pregnant. I want to make some baby blankets. Let me know what colors you like, maybe some design. So, or George, get somebody pregnant. Anyway, I'll end on that.
All right, we have just a few more minutes. So do we have were there any more questions, Julia? I know we picked the winners. Did Georgette get back in touch? Lauren and Jane both said hi. Georgette Mayo, you want some wool cotton?
Going back up through the chats. Oh,
yay, there she is. Okay, so everyone knows they need to email Julia at Madeline Tosh. Yep.
Julia Madeline Tosh. And then Chantal, we had a question. Did you make the sweater you're wearing, and would it work in a DK?
I did. This one is a size 5 bulky. It's not a pattern out yet, but it's coming at you. All. If I can get my butt in gear. I wish it was DK, but this yarn would be perfect for my peekaboo maxi skirt.
Can we double the DK?
Oh. I was about to say F it, yes, but yes, you could.
I think that was it. Someone did ask about drape, but I didn't know. They said, is there enough drape for A? And I didn't get the rest of it. So I'm not sure what they're asking, but they were asking about drape.
This should have pretty good drape. I mean, like Chantal said, she did it at a much larger needle size and that top drapes beautifully. But if you want it to have more body, just go down a few needle sizes. It has a lot of versatility. We did test 6 different yarns before deciding on this one too. So it wasn't like we just decided that this was the one. We played with several different things and came up with the one that we really are committed to.
At the top, my Nushali drapes beautifully too, even though it's at a standard gauge, basically you could say standard gauge. Yeah, I was really pleased with that because sometimes cotton doesn't drape that well. You know, it's a little stiff. This one isn't. So
this is lovely. I'm never taking this off. So
Okay.
I've already told Susanna that.
it looks great on you, so that's perfect.
It really does. All right, Julia, do we want to announce the free shipping promotional code and details?
Okay, so I'm going to drop this in the chat and don't lose it. This expires tomorrow, Friday at midnight, Central Time, and it's only valid for United States, and it's 1 per customer, but that's a free shipping code, and it's free ship party. So just enter that at checkout, and you'll get free shipping for your orders until tomorrow night at midnight. CST.
And MadelineTosh.com, right?
MadelineTosh.com, yes. And let me drop the rest of the info. If you want to shop any of these designs, you can get them. You can buy the wool plus cotton from either your LYS or MadelineTosh.com, and the patterns are available on Ravelry and our site. And don't forget to tag us and hashtag your projects with hashtag ToshWoolCotton so we can find it and share it on our stories. And thank you so much.
Any last final words from our co-hosts or designers? Any
Well,
last
Libby,
final words?
Didn't you say there's 62 yarn shops, I think, that are carrying it right now?
Ah, yeah, we have.
So I'll put my PSA in as a yarn shop owner. Always go to your yarn shop first. Just come to us and come to MadelineTosh.com. If you don't have a yarn shop that carries it, or you don't have somebody that's nearby, otherwise, please always go to your yarn shop for at least 90% of your purchases. Okay.
Okay.
Can I also just tag on to that to say we did a palette of 55 colors that we loved. A lot of local yarn shops ordered different colors that are not within our 55. So if you go to your local yarn shop, they could have something else. And so many of these colors that I didn't expect to be phenomenal are phenomenal. So you might find a hidden treasure at your LYS.
Ooh.
And please go buy one each of these patterns, because all
Yes.
have to get this money flowing between all of us to keep the industry going, and we have to pay artists. And the artists include the dyers, you know, the yarn shop owners, the designers, but without the designers, we have no industry. So we're so grateful to you guys. And at a bare minimum, just go in there and you just click buy 5 times, and you just buy 5 patterns tonight.
Thank you,
Go hard on
designers.
Ravelry if you can. Do it. Boost that algorithm.
Absolutely.
Great.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, participants. Good night. Have a great night, everyone. Thanks so much for coming. Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.